Budapest immediately following 1989-90's hissing, flapping deflation of communism, is coincidentally the much-admired invention of one of the 5 players in this very match, this very afternoon in May. Charles Gabor, when with people his own age, seems always to be the host, and at this small cafe table on this sunny patio, he reigns confidently and serenely. He resembles an Art Deco picture of a 1920s dandy. Long fingers, measured movements, smooth and gleaming panels of black hair, an audaciously collegiate tie, crisp, pleated slacks of a favorite cotton twill, a humorously pointed nose, a sly half-smile, one eyebrow engineered for expressivity. Under the green and interlacing trees surrounding the terrace and nodding over the heads of tourists, resident foreigners, and the occasional Hungarian, Charles Gabor sits with 4 other Westerners, an unlikely group, pieced together these past few weeks from parties and family references, friend of friend of friend happenstance, and, in one case just now being introduced, sheer, scarcely tolerable intrusiveness. 5 people who, in normal life back home, would have been satisfied never to have known one another. 5 young expatriates, hunched around an undersized cafe table, a moment of total insignificance, and not without a powerful whiff of cliché. Unless you are one of them. Then this meaningless, overdrawn moment may, then or later, seem to be somehow the summation of both an era and your own youth, your undeniably defining afternoon, though you can hardly say that aloud without making a joke of it. Somehow, this one game of sincerity becomes the distilled recollection of a much longer series of events. It persistently rises to the surface of your memory, that afternoon when you fell in love with a person or a place or a mood, when you savored the power of fooling everyone, when you discovered some great truth about the world, when, like a baby duck, glimpsing your quacking mother's waddling rear for the first time, an indelible brand was seared into your heart, which is, of course, a finite space, with limited room for searing. Despite its insignificance, there was this moment, this hour or two, this spring afternoon blurring into evening on a cafe patio in a Central European capital in the opening weeks of its post-communist era. The glasses of liqueur, the diamond dapples of light between oval, leaf-shaped shadows, like optical illusions. The trellised curve of the cast-iron fence, separating the patio from its surrounding city square. The uncomfortable chair. Someday this, too, will represent someone's receding, cruelly unattainable, golden age. To Charles Gabor's right sits Mark Peyton, who will eventually think of this very moment as one of the glowing, unequaled triumphs of his life. Retrospection will polish from this ambiguous, complicated afternoon all its rough edges, until Mark will be able to see nearly to its crystalline center, to its discernible seed pod of future events, to the, extremely unlikely, refraction of himself as a young and happy man, sniffing love and welcome in the spring air. He sits at peace, a state he is lately finding harder and harder to achieve. When these 5 met at the Gerbeau this afternoon, before Charles pulled out Emily Oliver's chair for her, Mark was already discreetly securing the seat he wanted, as he always does at the half-dozen places he's come to love in his 2 months in Budapest. He knows that his view, and with it his afternoon, perhaps even several days, would have been damaged if his secret wishes had been thwarted by a misseating of even 45 degrees. Safely placed, he can turn his head to the left and see the Café Gerbeau itself, into its antique interior, into the very past. Pastry cases, walls of mirrors and dark wood panels, red velvet seat cushions on gold-painted chairs. In daylight, the cushions are threadbare and the paint flakes. But Mark Peyton doesn't mind. A reupholsterer would steal a certain something in exchange for his handiwork. Atmospheric decay and faded glory reassure Mark, prove something. Much of Budapest, unpainted, uncleaned, unrepaired during 45 years of communist rule immediately following a brutal war, provides similar pleasures. For now. Straight ahead and past his friends, Mark's New World eye is treated to the grand, intentionally overwhelming European architecture of the 19th century, though it has long since lost the ability to overwhelm its native audience. For years, Mark has longed to stare at such architecture, to inhale it, ingest it somehow. Unfortunately, he cannot forget that down Hormensod Utse, to the left, a Kempinski hotel is slated to inflict its glass and steel corporate modernity on the odd, neglected asymmetry of neighboring Deák Square. But at least he can't see the site's unspeakable stretch marks and scars from where he sits. Just to the right of tiny, hardly mappable Hormensod Utse stands an office building in his beloved, typical 19th century Osman style. The sort of giant, mansard-roofed beauty sprinkled all over Pest and Paris, Madrid and Milan. That its ground floor window-front space is occupied by the dusty and only sporadically open sales office of a second-string airline does not offend Mark's aesthetics, because the decor of the office, plainly visible from his seat, is so absurdly 1960s East Bloc, so unintentionally and yet bittersweetly hilarious, that it evokes a golden age all its own. A sun-faded epic of boxy-suited apparatchiks and black-and-white Ivy League diplomats in round metal glasses, of stewardesses in pillbox hats, of Bulgarian assassins and Oxbridge traitors, of this amusingly foreign and irrelevant airline acquiring such prime real estate due to ideological compatibility rather than free market wherewithal. That office building defines most of the east side, and the Gerbeau, the entirety of the north side, of Vörösmarty Square, the touristic, if not geographic, center of Budapest. Artists and easels scattered around the towering bronze perch of Vörösmarty, a poet Mark intends to research eventually, if he can find translations. And the plaza's southern side, 19th century buildings parting to reveal Váci utca, a pedestrian shopping street, curving away and out of sight. From its mouth echoes the anachronistic sound of an Andean band, piping and thumping love songs of the Bolivian highlands. The musicians serve a welcome purpose for Mark. The throbbing, serape-clad romantics screen the unsightly view of a blocks-long line of Hungarians, some in finery for the occasion, eager to sample Hungary's first McDonald's. Of course, the rest of the group has not been spared the square's west side, from which Mark has protected himself. But even with his back to it, he can sense the building jeering at him, the concrete slabs and offensive edges of its 1970s facade, too old to be new, too young to claim the aesthetic privileges of antiquity, painfully visible from the Gerbeau, unless one is far-sighted enough to claim the westernmost seat, under the gentle green branches, next to the graceful ironwork, with a view into the cafe's dark interior, into the sparkling past. Fast losing his red hair, and fast gaining weight, his pouched and sagging face always looking vaguely exhausted, even when his conversation motors hyperactively on matters of history and culture, Mark Peyton comes from Canada, where, barring some quasi-French enclaves, it doesn't look like this. He has just emerged from nearly 22 years of education. Having acquired his Ph.D. in cultural studies a few months ago, he is now 3 weeks into a projected 11-month European trip, researching the book that he intends to be a popularized expansion of his doctoral thesis, A History of Nostalgia. Next to him sits Emily Oliver, a Nebraskan, though she passed her first mostly forgotten 5 years in Washington, D.C. She, too, has recently arrived, landing in March to serve as the new special assistant to the United States ambassador, a post she secured on her own merit.